Text number what?
2.3.18.
1.8.
Yes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Taravakim na jivanti. Vastrakim na svashantyata. Nakadanti na mehanti. Kim grame prashavo pare. Taravakim na jivanti. Vastrakim na svashanta. Nakadanti na medhanti. Kim grame prashavo pare. Translation: Do not the trees live? Do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us, do the beasts not eat and discharge semen? Purport: The materialistic man in the modern age will argue that life or part of it is never meant for discussion of theosophical or theological arguments. Life is meant for the maximum duration of existence, for eating, drinking, sexual intercourse, making merry. The modern man wants to live forever by the advancement of material science, and there are many foolish theories for prolonging life to the maximum duration. But the Srimad Bhagavatam affirms that life is not meant for so-called economic development or advancement of materialistic science, for the hedonistic philosophy of eating, mating, drinking, and merrymaking. Life is solely meant for tapasya, for purifying existence, so that one may enter into eternal life just after the end of the human form of life. Paragraph. The materialists want to prolong life as much as possible because they have no information of the next life. They want to get the maximum comforts in the present life because they think conclusively that there is no life after death. This ignorance about the eternity of the living being and the change of covering of the material world in the material world has played havoc in the structure of modern human society. Consequently, there are many problems multiplied by various plans of modernized man. The plans for solving the problems of society have only aggravated the troubles. Even if it is possible to prolong life more than 100 years, advancement of human civilization does not necessarily follow. The Bhagavatam says that certain trees live for hundreds and thousands of years. At Vrindavan, there's a tamarind tree. The place is known as Imlital, which is said to have existed since the time of Lord Krishna. In the Calcutta Botanical Garden, there's a banyan tree said to be older than 500 years. And there are many such trees all over the world. Swami Shankaracharya lived for only 32 years. And Lord Chaitanya lived 48 years. Does it mean that the prolonged life of the above-mentioned trees are more important than Shankara or Chaitanya? Prolonged life without spiritual value is not very important. One may doubt that trees have life because they do not breathe. But modern scientists like Bose have already proved that there is life in plants, so breathing is no sign of actual life. The Bhagavatam says that the bellows of the blacksmith breathes very soundly, but that does not mean that the bellows has life. The materialist will argue that life in the tree and life in the man cannot be compared because the tree cannot enjoy life by eating palatable dishes or by enjoying sexual intercourse. In reply to this, the Bhagavatam asks whether other animals like dogs and hogs living in the same village with human beings do not eat and enjoy sexual life. The specific uttered Bhagavatam in regard to, quote, other animals means that persons who are simply engaged in planning a better type of animal life consisting of eating, breathing, and mating are also animals in the shape of human beings. A society of such polished animals cannot benefit suffering humanity, for an animal can easily harm another animal but rarely do good. Now, what does Prabhupada come up with these statements? They're so like this last one. An animal can easily harm another but rarely do good. Right. The use of words is gifted by Krishna. Without going into the detail, the essence of these comparisons of human life to other forms of life or bellows of a blacksmith, etc., it's the use of logic to counteract the atheist or the logician who may say, well, why this importance, why this emphasis on hearing Harikatha? You're saying all these things about hearing Harikatha or Shabda Brahman, but that's not the purpose of life. The purpose of life is merrymaking. And we're not interested, we're not going to take our time to hear Harikatha or Shabda Brahman. So this is, it's a, in the process of presenting Vedic knowledge, we engage ourselves with logic, while at the same time we recognize that logic is inconclusive. Say it the other way. Logic is inconclusive. Tarka apratishta. It's not conclusive. One can reason, and then another comes along who has better reason, another comes along who has better reason. And in Vedic times, it was quite common. Now, it's not the same as Vedic times, but it was quite common that learned fellows would go from place to place expecting there would be a gathering and they would have a debate, this logician against that logician. And theoretically, at least, the better logician would win. And the ethical position of the one who lost unto the one who won is they would submit and become their student, and the students of that one who lost would become similarly that student. And in this way, a very accomplished logician would have a following. And then the following created is like might makes right. And then just along comes another better logician. So it's kind of inconclusive. But that's the way of minus the authority of Shabda Brahman, then standing alone, Nyaya is fruitless. At the same time, my little understanding of Nyaya is it's essential for understanding the Vedas. So along with Vyakarana, the rules of grammar, how to apply this rule, how to apply that rule, and where and when requires Nyaya, logic. If you don't have logic, how do you apply a rule? You can get the rule wrong or the application of the rule wrong without logic. So it's, in other words, it's an essential part of Vedic wisdom, but standing alone is insufficient. Not by Nyaya applied to the Vedas is it sufficient. So what if that's not sufficient, then what is? Because the Vedic wisdom stands alone. We have to apply Nyaya, but these little sections is taking, as Prabhupada would do when he would meet with people that wouldn't accept, not necessarily simply want to debate, but would not accept his assertions, and very patiently, backwards, forwards, going over the same point 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, he would use logic to establish Vedic conclusion. And then after going through the logic of the Vedic conclusion, he would state the Shabda Praman. But it wasn't the first foot. The first foot was logic. So the Vedas are quite logical, and they're quite compelling. But ultimately, their compellingness is upon Shabda Praman. But then Shabda Praman can be interpreted in so many different ways. And it's not that, let's just say that a Vaishnava, like there's 4 sampradayas, it's not that a Vaishnava sampradaya acharya must agree with another Vaishnava sampradaya acharya. They'll have a different take on the same Vedas. Or even within the same line of disciplic succession, there may be differences. There are differences. And is it okay? Not only okay, it's perfectly natural, proper, etc. For example, because of the time spent in Udupi, I started becoming familiar with the teachings of Madhvacharya, and some of the Nava Prameyas, or essential teachings of Madhvacharya, are nearly 100% with the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he makes some statements that are very different. Very different. Like, here's a very different one. Like, Lakshmi is a jiva. I hope you're shocked. She is that perfect jiva. There is only one. She's the perfect jiva. No Shakti Tattva and varieties of Shakti, Swarup Shakti and varieties of Swarup Shakti, none of that. She's a jiva, perfect jiva, faultless jiva. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't teach that. And his teaching is something else, and his teaching is based upon Shastra. So how do you get from Madhvacharya to what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught, and they're in the same disciplic line? The answer is Shakha, which means branch, Shakha Beda. There's the tree, there's the branch of the tree. So the the essence of the tree trunk is the same. But there's some branches of teachings that differ. It's quite okay. It's what we're doing. Here's another, for example. For example, in Vrindavan, one of the foremost acharyas on our philosophy or the teachings, let's say Bhagavad Gita, commentary, is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur had amongst his students, one of them was Baladev Vijayabhusan. Both Baladev Vijayabhusan and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote commentaries on Bhagavad Gita. There's a particular verse in first chapter of Bhagavad Gita where it's describing the armies that were assembled on behalf of the Kauravas, on behalf of the Pandavas, and the two, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev, take diametrically opposite views on a particular word, that the armies were sufficient, the armies were insufficient. Forget the Sanskrit word. And that's the same, one generation to the next generation. And it's not like Baladev was an upstart. He didn't properly respect Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So that's not what it is, not disrespect and a deviation and a speculation, then how do we process that? Following Nyaya, there are different derivations of dhatu, of root words, and it can mean this and that can mean that, following Vedic rules. And so he was a follower of Vedic rules. And he had a certain lens through which he was looking at Bhagavad Gita, different than Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It's perfectly okay, provided there's Shastra Praman, because that's the emperor. And then there's the rules for identifying the meaning of Shastra, and it's perfectly okay that there's different meaning for identifying what Shastra says. Now, I'll come back to the verse and purport. What's going on here, one of the ways of describing what's going on is Shukadeva Goswami is taking the foundational premise, pure devotional service, change in heart, comes about by hearing the glories, name, fame, qualities, pastimes, etc. of the personality of Godhead. It brings about a change of heart. And without that change of heart, then the fullness of Bhagavan is not going to be revealed. Even still, the fullness of Bhagavan has to be revealed. But it's not going to happen without the change of heart. So bhakti is that power, and the power of bhakti comes through the process of hearing of Bhagavan. Now, this is a Nyaya section, kind of, logic and reason section. Some persons may argue, well, wait a minute, and assert the wait a minute message. Shukadeva Goswami certainly knew. Prabhupada, as our commentator, certainly knew. And, there's changes over time, what logic persons may say, my objection is this, and another time the objection is that, and so forth and so on. Not like they have to hit all targets, but the popular ones, at least during that particular time, Prabhupada is pointing out those targets. And some may say, in contradiction to the message of the chapter, hearing Hari Katha, hearing Shabda Praman from the right source is the mean for the change of heart and the realization of Bhagavan. And persons may say something else. So this is a logical way, which some persons are more expert at than others. Prabhupada happened to be very expert. Not that he was a logician, but he could be in a conversation with anybody and pin them to the mat. On the authority of Shastra, but the approach before the Shastra came out of into the conversation, into the open, it was logic. So some of these, back to the particulars of this verse. His assertion is havoc has been created by persons who are ignorant of the eternality of the soul and accept the covering as who we are. You know, it's a fundamental Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 message. But missing that point, there's the consequence is very serious, you know, because society, by philosophers or politicians or whomever, they're misguided. And people don't find who they are, they don't find real happiness, and so they're looking for real happiness in some other way. Real happiness in some other way. That's materialistic life. Because we really are stays in a box. And I'm looking for happiness. And creation of stuff called economic development is to bring happiness. The morning classes that I'm listening to, Prabhupada's in Mexico, 1975. He's meeting with two professors from some university in Mexico. I assume it's Mexico City, but I don't know. And there's a lady and a man. And the man is being very stubborn, or persistent at least. He has a deep philosophical, like philosophy question. Why do things exist? You know, a philosophical question. And Prabhupada replies, but better question than why do things exist is where do things come from? But he keeps, you know, circling back to, I want to know, what's the purpose? And once he stuck on, because that's similar. Why is the purpose of something? So Prabhupada's explanation is Ananda. It connects with this purport. People want happiness. But if they don't know who they are, they're going to seek for happiness some other way. And some other way means stuff. The creation of a civilization that takes people further and further and further and further and further and further and further away from who they really are. And the solution for happiness brings more problems than the solution. We discussed a little bit yesterday evening at the university program. Not a solution. And instead, emotional distress or trauma or negative emotions are just on the rise, etc., etc. So it was yesterday evening conversation. And so a material amenities or material stuff doesn't bring happiness. And when it doesn't bring happiness, then the expectation, when expectations, here's a simple adage, when expectations are not met, it's a source of frustration. I'm expecting happiness, it doesn't happen. I may accept the outcome as happiness when it's not happiness, the opposite. birth, death, disease, old age, for example. I don't want, but it comes. Now, wait a minute, I'm happy. My dear sir or madam, how long is that happiness? And what's the quality and degree of happiness? It's not ananda. But whenever it is covered, the real happiness is covered, and then it's completely flipped. It's no longer happiness. It's will of the wisp. It's ephemeral. It appears to be, but it has no substance kind of happiness. Wait a minute, I'm happy. Don't tell me I'm not happy. I'm happy. But that's not what happiness is. So, guiding civilization away from the conclusions of Shabda Praman or Harikatha leads people into a very distressful situation. And then comes some other varieties of counter arguments. Do trees not live? The tree is not. So the counter argument with life is breathing, but where's the breathing in the trees? They don't have lungs. The bellows of the blacksmith are breathing, but is that life? The tree may live for hundreds of years, and someone in high elevated consciousness, here Shankaracharya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, short life, you're going to say the tree's in a better position than. So what's the better position? It's nyaya or tarka. Tarka is argument. Nyaya is the logic that nyaya applies, or that the tarka applies. So one has to be a little bit logical, and then we hear the Vedic sound from the right source, and then again we apply our logic. Does it make sense? Supposing you're not a very logical person, then it's going to take a while to make sense of it. But persons that have refined intelligence means their capacity to distinguish one thing from another thing, thus logic is stronger. And so it becomes compelling. Just by hearing it becomes compelling. Supposing one's intelligence is weak, then one may go on and argue, what about this, what about that, which is okay. If that's one's position, the doubts should be raised. But again, this section is covering people that may object to this firm, strong position that just hearing Bhagavad Gita, Hari Katha, Shabda Praman, that's sufficient. Perfection will come. Stay on board. One more time. The materialists have a different standard of what is happiness. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, or merrymaking. Another phrase. That's the purpose of life, and to do it for as long as you can. And that's life. If you can extend life, that's good. But extend life for what purpose? Extend life in illusion, and is that the purpose? It's not so much publicized anymore, but there was a period of time when Walt Disney was a very creative, fanciful person after creating Disneyland, etc., as his body was getting older, he made a very expensive arrangement to have his body frozen. So when they figured out how to make eternal life, his body could be thawed out and he could live eternally as Walt Disney. I don't know what happened, but after that. But that's how much confidence he had in modern science. And quite the opposite with our founder Acharya. Modern science, let them display a life that's free from birth, disease, and old age. The real problems, let them solve them. Let's see the example. And that's because that is one way of saying what Ananda is, or what real happiness is eternal Ananda, not temporary. Temporary and covered. Exactly in the language of Bhagavad Gita. Limited and temporary. Material life, limited and temporary. The happiness is limited. It's not what real happiness is. It's covered happiness. It gives a semblance of happiness, so therefore people keep going. But they also keep going looking for improved happiness because it's not what real happiness is. Anyway, so the logic goes on and on and on. And such persons are wasting their time being clever with their logic when the simple solution is already provided. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. Next one, Swavidvara Hoshtra Karai. Very interesting.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for the class. Maharaj, my question is, even after tasting like the happiness that comes out of spiritual practices like chanting and reading, sometimes seek out for material happiness which is temporary and ephemeral and it's not fulfilling. And then there is this concept of this feeling of guilt, and then you go back, it's back and forth. So how to stick towards one side of the lane instead of trying to go on both the sides of the lane?
How to go from unsteady to steady? Is that your question? Anartha Nivritti. And how is Anartha Nivritti accomplished? Bhajana Kriya. How is Bhajana Kriya accomplished? Through Sadhu Sangha. Carefully guided. And, the heart is unsteady because consciousness is covered. And so in that unsteady, covered consciousness, sometimes better application, sometimes weaker application, because that's just the nature of unsteady, sometimes and sometimes. So acknowledging that's my situation, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker. I'd like to go more to the stronger and less to the weaker application side. So then it's Abhyasa Yoga Yoktena. That's the remedy of Bhagavad Gita. Abhyasa, by practice, and ideally in association of sadhus. So then we need to find some sadhus and associate with those sadhus. The merciful ones that are willing to extend themselves and their own practice so that we can become more sadhu-like and less unsteady-like. And they continue this Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, the same principle applies, but enhanced by Sadhu Sangha. And respectful association with Sadhu Sangha. And then comes, the problems. Okay, I'm doing sadhu sangha, and I'm in this situation where the sadhus are less than perfect. And my mind is fault finding, the less than perfectness. So I feel uncomfortable being in sadhusanga that's less than perfect, although I'm less than perfect too. So it's denying the principle and getting stuck on the same fault within oneself that one is finding in others, the less than perfect. So what's the remedy? Stay away from fault finding and look to the respect that goes to the sadhu-ness of those less than perfect sadhus. Because they're following the remedy. There's an expert physician, and like others who are patients in this hospital, they're following the remedy of the good physician. So the good physician is a good physician, and they're not well yet, but let me respect that they're following the good physician. With confidence that the physician's recommendation and the medicine, the diet, is going to cure the disease. As with me, so with them, or as with them, so with me. So my respect goes to their following the qualified physician. It doesn't mean I can't see the less than perfectness of others. Rather, Bhaktisiddhanta indicates, look inwardly and see where are those less than perfectness features in me and fix that. Otherwise, we're going to make fence in sadhusanga and make things, again, difficult for us because of the fence. It doesn't mean stay away from sadhusanga. It means fix the problem or address the tendency. Like rather than fly like. Going from unsteady to steady.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anyone?
I have one more, Maharaj. So there's a relative of mine who comes home and makes a lot of atheistic comments in front of my kids.
Who?
A relative.
A relative
A
comes to your
relative of
home
mine. Yeah.
and he
And
criticizes.
yeah, and makes a lot of atheistic comments, doesn't believe in God and stuff like that. So at that point, I have engaged in debate and stuff like that with him. But afterwards, it doesn't matter what the result of the debate was, but after the debate is ended, I felt my consciousness has really somehow gone down. Like my chanting is not there, my spiritual practices take a hit. So at that moment, what should be the mode to operate if someone is making such comments in your house in front of your kids? Let it go or engage and then suffer later?
This is a judgment call, so the answer is it depends. If the person's coming to your house, the principle that makes sense to me, I'm not a sociologist, but it makes sense to me that you make boundaries. You draw a line. You have your view, fine. I'm raising my family according to these views. And when you come to my home, you're my relative, I'll respect you, but please respect this line. It's a request. And no, I can't respect that line. I've got to do my thing. Then you may have to draw the line and say, well, then you can come back when you're ready to follow that boundary. That's how strongly I feel about it. I mean, now I don't know how that's going to fly amongst other relatives that really he said that. Oh gosh. But you know, you're the protector of your family. They can't protect themselves. You're the protector. If he's speaking like that to you, then is he directly or indirectly speaking like that to those who you're protecting? And you know, aside from your own sadhana, you're a protector within your home. You're not in charge of what's outside your home, but you're in charge of what's inside your home. So you know, you can take guidance from somebody that understands how to do these things more, you know, subtly and more sophisticated than what I just said. But the principle makes sense. Aside from your own sadhana and the rise and fall of your own sadhana. If someone, I'm just thinking out loud, but if someone can't respect that, there's something fundamentally wrong with the person that can't respect that. And if there's something fundamentally wrong with someone that can't respect that, then they have no place in your home, whatever the bodily connection is. I can be respectful, you know, have your views. Okay, you got your views. You got friends that have same views. Fantastic. And I'm not disrespecting your views or their views, your circle of friends. But please don't disrespect mine when you come to my home. That's the boundary. There's a welcome mat in front of the door, but that welcome mat has the following boundary. Anyway, that's an idea or one approach. And whatever waves it creates, it creates. There's consequences if you do that. There's consequences if you don't do that. Choose your consequences. And offer a prayer to Krishna, my dear Lord Krishna. I'm insufficiently strong to persuade this relative of ours to be more respectful. I don't have the spiritual strength. I don't have the capacity. I don't have what it takes to do that. Therefore, please protect me. You know, from what may be, I don't know. So, anyway, that's my thought. You take deeper shelter of Krishna rather than this other, the cycle of what you described. I mean, it's easier for me to sit here and say that and think through it very carefully, might come with a different idea, something, but that's what comes to mind right now. Anything else?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada.
Professor Maharaj ki.